Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started in just a few minutes, give some people some time to join, and we'll get started shortly. All right, why don't we go ahead and let's get started. All right, welcome everyone to Wildfire Safety, How Resilient is Your Home? I am going to be passing it over to Christine Condon. She's going to be hosting us today. And Christine, welcome, let's get started.
Good morning. So glad you all could join us. Thanks for logging on for our Wildfire Safety, How Resilient is Your Home presentation today. Hold on a second. I'm trying to advance my slides. I'm going to have to take a second for it to advance. Oh, there it is. Oh, happy day. So I'd like to welcome you all. My colleague Doria Strella is going to be kind of managing the chat and questions, and she's a department analyst with the County of Sonoma Energy and Sustainability Division. I'm also a department analyst with the county's Energy and Sustainability Division. We're part of General Services. My background is I've been in building science for about 21 years. My emphasis is in energy and sustainability. And more recently, I've had the opportunity to learn a lot more about wildfire resilience and home hardening because of the expansion of our program, and because there's been just a lot more opportunity to learn how to make our homes more resilient. So everyone's going to be muted during this presentation, and your videos will be off. But you'll have an opportunity to ask questions in the chat, and we will likely just address those at the end unless there's something really pressing, and Doria will track those during the presentation. So as I said, we're part of the Energy and Sustainability Division, and I'm sorry, I can't really see this. So sorry for the technical issues. And our focus is on better buildings and behaviors. We focus on resiliency, health, energy, water efficiency, energy independence, and how to help folks save money on their utility usage. In our organization, we have many different programs and local government partnerships. Some of the services we offer are site visits for municipal and schools projects, and building audits for those entities, green business certification, sustainability workshops. We maintain a qualified contractor list for our Sonoma County Energy Independence PACE financing program, which I'll talk about at the very end. We coordinate financing and rebate programs, specialized trainings, and we offer no-cost consulting and project planning services for upgrades and installations of solar, things like that. So our presentation today is really focused on wildfire safety and home hardening basics. So I just wanted to start with a little overview, a background on wildfire safety. But again, we're going to really focus on the area closest to the home, the area that we as property owners have the most control over. So first of all, just wanted to talk about how homes ignite in a wildfire. There are three ways that have been identified. There's direct flame exposure, radiant heat, and embers. The direct flame exposure is caused by vegetation or items close to the building that ignite and then ignite the home. Radiant heat is caused by proximity to heat from adjacent structures or vegetation that are on fire. And then embers, those are just kind of flying, burning particles that actually cause 80%, and I've read in some cases 90% of home loss in wildfires. So that's really where we're going to focus today. A little bit on the others, but mostly on this ember issue. So during wildfires, home loss is primarily related to vulnerabilities on the structure itself, fuels within 100 feet and more surrounding it, and weather. So some of the things we can do to help with this is to harden the structures to prevent ignition and create defensible space. And when the weather conditions warrant it, especially during red flag warnings and high wind advisories. We always avoid mowing and operating equipment during the day. And if you have to mow, do it before 10 a.m. and never on a hot and windy day. So kind of this is one version of kind of the zonal control around a home. And this applies to commercial buildings to really any buildings in wildfire prone areas. Some guides call this zone 1, and this guide calls it zone 0. And I like the ground zero definition. The first area is the ember resistant zone. And that's the within 0 to 5 feet of the home. This is a super important area to focus on. This area, the opportunities are to reduce the vulnerability of the home by creating a zone of ember resistant materials around the home. Hardscape is commonly used, and the zone includes the area under and around attached decks. Keep the zone clear of any wood piles, wood mulch, and flammable vegetation and stuff. We'll talk about stuff too later. The area farther out between 5 and 30 feet, this area can help reduce the risk of spreading fire from surrounding vegetation. We want to keep this area lean with only a small amount of vegetation, and if any is present, the vegetation should be grouped in discontinuous islands. We want to keep this area clean. Vegetative debris, dead materials are routinely removed, and keep the area green. So vegetation is kept green and irrigated during fire season. The third zone is the zone from 30 to 100 feet from the home. Many folks don't have control over this zone. It might be beyond your property lines. Still good to be aware of it. So basically you want to reduce fire spreading into the crowns of trees or shrubs, remove dead plant material, lower tree branches, remove lower tree branches and other ladder fuels where fires can spread to the crowns, locate outbuildings at least 30 feet away from the home. And if you can't do that, they should be made from non-combustible materials, and create an ember resistant zone around all outbuildings and propane tanks. So like I said, we're going to focus on home hardening today. The main areas, the main components that we're going to focus on are the components that have been identified by fire safety experts as the highest priority to focus on. The first is the roof and the roof edge. Second is vents. Third, vegetation and defensible space. Fourth, windows and doors. 5, decks, patios, and porches. And 6th is siding. So the first, home hardening of the roof. The roof covering and the edge are the most vulnerable part of the home. Because of the flat, horizontal, or even sloped, but real flat, vulnerable surface, the roof has the most exposure to wildfire embers. And it's also an area that's prone to accumulation of combustible debris. The roof edge, if there are large gaps between the roof covering and the roof sheathing, like in that upper left-hand corner image of the tile roof where there's that barrel tile has an opening at the end, but you can see this on all kinds of roofs that are in kind of disrepair or older. If there are gaps between the covering and the roof sheathing, this can allow ember intrusion and ignite the wood-based sheathing that's underneath the roof surface and also any wood fascia board. Another area is roof gutters. So roofs can be vulnerable at the roof edge where the gutters are attached, and vegetative debris in gutters can ignite and spread. So how to reduce the vulnerability of roofs? The first way is when you're re-roofing or installing a new roof, you should install Class A roofing. Many jurisdictions in Sonoma County require this for re-roofing. So it's, really, if you need a new roof, it's going to be a Class A roof if you live in Sonoma County generally. Class A roofing includes asphalt fiberglass, comp shingles, clay tiles, cementitious tiles, some metal roofing, if the system actually includes the proper underlayment, and ridge caps must be installed to avoid fuel accumulation. Class B and Class C roof surface materials can also have a Class A definition or rating. However, they require that the system complies with the Class A assembly requirements that are specified by the manufacturer. A Class A roof is designed to withstand a burning box of wood for 1 hour without burning through. So this image is an example of a Class B or C roof covering with the proper roof sheathing down below, and then an additional fire resistant layer. So this is a very explicit system. So for existing buildings, really good idea if you have a wood shake or shingle roof that isn't Class A, then when you're considering replacement, you should definitely replace it with a Class A roof. And then for all roofs, remove vegetative debris from the roof. It makes the roof really vulnerable. And then block any openings if there is space between the roof material and the roof deck. And so they have lots of ways to block openings in barrel tile roofing. It's called bird stop. So it helps with varmint or pest intrusion also. Many of these measures that we're talking about are actually going to have co-benefits like helping with pest intrusion. So it's actually a really good practice to kind of implement these measures. So you're going to block openings if there is space between the roofing material and the roof deck, and then inspect and maintain and replace roofs in poor condition. They become extremely vulnerable to wildfires, especially like you see the images on the left. That's actually a good Class A roof, in good shape. And the one next to it, not so good. There's lots of crumbling roof shingles and lots of opportunities for embers to intrude. The third picture from the left is just showing where vegetative debris accumulates in areas where the roof surface, the horizontal surface, meets the vertical surface of the wall siding. And you can see this home may have a Class A roof surface, which is really resistant to fires burning through. But the siding is wood. So that really creates a problem, because wood siding may not be the highest priority because a vertical surface is not as vulnerable. However, once you start lighting a big brush fire right next to it, it will actually burn. So really important to clear that vegetative debris and consider even in areas like this with complex assemblies, where a vegetative debris builds up, may want to consider even a spot replacement with non-combustible material or metal flashing, something like that. And we'll talk more about that. And I did talk about the openings. Just make sure that these openings do get filled so debris can't build up and just offer an opportunity for ember intrusion. So we also mentioned vulnerability of roof edges and gutters, and here's some good images here showing what happens and what are some mitigation measures. Definitely remove the debris from the roof. Keep gutters obsessively clean. Gutters are a notorious problem because they are a more horizontal kind of surface. And of course, we all know how much vegetation accumulates in gutters. Install non-combustible gutters, which are metal gutters, with non-combustible gutter covers, and that really helps. You still have to keep the areas around gutter covers clean, but it's not such a big, deep pile of debris. And then inspect the roof to see if a metal drip edge is installed on the edge between the roof surface and the plywood roof decking. So you can see this on the bottom left image. It's actually got a metal drip edge here, and then covered gutter, gutter guard, and then nice metal gutters. So really important to inspect those things on existing buildings. It's a new construction code requirement. to have a metal drip edge. And when you're re-roofing, that's also a code requirement. So, you know, that's something to really look at for existing buildings. Another area, the second area, is vents. So vents are very vulnerable to ember intrusion. Open eave vent construction, which is shown by this upper left image, is really vulnerable just because embers get caught underneath that area and can go intrude into the vents, the soffit vents. Also, 1/4 inch vent screens are very common on vents for existing buildings, and embers large enough to pass through 1/4 inch screen can definitely ignite fuels inside both attic areas and crawl space areas. Gable end vents shown in this image are real vulnerable to wind-blown embers, and then foundation and crawl space vents are also vulnerable to ember intrusion. So how to reduce the vulnerability of vents? Opt for soffitted eave design for under eave outlet inlet vents. So that's where you're actually covering up those open areas and then still allowing for venting, but there's not as much of an opportunity for embers to get in there and ignite the wood underneath. Install 1/16 inch, preferably, to 1/8 inch mesh over vents. Now, this is definitely something you want to work with a professional on. You can certainly do this yourself, but do keep in mind that you want to keep that airflow flowing through these areas. That's very important for moisture control. So this isn't an arbitrary thing to do. 1/8 inch mesh, really easy to do over if you have existing 1/4 inch screen, but definitely at the very minimum, have 1/8 inch mesh over the vents. Install ember resistant gable end vents, and then also potentially invest in Wildfire urban interface rated vents. This is a website, and we have more links at the end of the presentation, but this is a materials database from the California Fire Marshal that lists WUI, or Wildfire urban interface rated materials for construction. And they have a great section on vents. Some of the vents that are listed in the WUI, on the WUI site or the Fire Marshal site are listed here, but there are others, and we're not promoting one brand over another, but these are just given as examples. And you can see this is just a little ruler that shows the size of the opening of the screen. And then reduce what is stored in the attic and crawl space. If embers enter through these vents, then you know that's a real problem if there's flammable materials in those areas. So the third area to focus on is the defensible space within the critical zone from 0 to 5 feet from the home. So here you want to avoid combustible stuff, especially during fire season. So if you see a red flag warning, time to bring in those flammable welcome mats. And there's an image here that shows a broom, you know, a straw broom that ignited the wall that it was hanging on. Tools with wooden handles, things like that, really important. Clear vegetation in this area. Do not install flammable mulch around the home in this area. Wood piles are a real problem. Wooden fences attached to the home are a problem, and propane tanks. And that little pet door, Caroleon Safford from Fire and Emergency Services really brought this up in her last presentation. If you do get an evacuation warning, definitely want to make sure that thing is covered, because that's a great way for the wind to blow in embers from fire in close proximity. So all those openings in the building envelope you want to make sure are covered. So here's some ways that we can reduce the vulnerability of this 0 to 5 foot critical zone. Get rid of combustible stuff within this zone. Deck furniture, wooden ladders, brooms, wooden tools, etc. should be absent during fire season. Wood piles should be stored 30 feet away from buildings, or if that's not possible, store inside a building that's non-combustible, maybe CMU or cement block building, something like that. Or you can cover them with a non-flammable tarp and make sure that tarp stays in place during an event. Propane tanks should be 30 feet, minimum of 30 feet away from the home, with a non-combustible zone, or 10-foot non-combustible zone around the tank, or you can enclose the tank with a non-combustible enclosure. So really no wood piles against the house. That's bad for termites anyway. And just really be cognizant of that area, wooden planters, wooden handles, things like that. And here's some more on how to reduce the vulnerability in the 0 to 5 foot critical zone. So vegetation, avoid and remove woody plants in this zone. Remove all vegetation within 5 feet of windows and glass doors. That's a very vulnerable area. You don't want vegetation there. Avoid, use non-combustible mulch. So avoid wood bark or rubber products that really, once they combust, they really burn for a long time. And it's gnarly, the smoke that they produce. No small pieces of bark in this area or gorilla hair, that really fine mulch, is really, really dangerous in this zone. Walkways or hardscaping can be used with pavers, rock mulch, or pea gravel, and there's some beautiful examples of that. And it makes it really easy to maintain these areas too. So it's real durable, and it can really add to the curb appeal. And this area, this non-combustible area, really needs to include the area under and around attached decks. So this is a nice image of non-combustible hardscaping around the, and gravel around the, right next to the home, along with a really cool rain catchment barrel so that you have a nice supply of water stored from storms. So another way to reduce the vulnerability of this 0 to 5 foot critical zone is by not having fences, combustible fences attached to the home. So generally, we have lots of wood fences in our homes. So it's a very vulnerable point of contact or flame intrusion for the home, and as you can see in this upper image. So a really best practice is to have at least a 5 to 10 foot non-combustible section of the fence. That section attached to the house should be made of a non-combustible material. And there's some really attractive ways to do that with metal fencing, and it really helps with because fences can be a real problem. Also regularly remove vegetation debris that can accumulate at the base of a fence. So if your property is surrounded by a wooden fence, really good idea to rake around the base, because it's just a nice, it's really firewood if that base vegetation ignites. So the next priority is windows and doors. Windows and glass doors can be really vulnerable to breakage during a fire. The most vulnerable part of the window is the glass. And so single pane windows are really the most vulnerable type of windows when exposed to wildfire conditions. So some ways to reduce the vulnerability of windows and doors. Always close windows during wildfire events. Just make that a best practice, standard practice. Replace single pane windows with dual pane windows with at least one pane of tempered glass. So that pane of tempered glass can be on either the inside of the assembly or the outside to the exterior. Actually, best practice on the exterior, but in the WUI zones, the code requires that one pane of glass be tempered. So you get to choose whichever area that's located. Tempered glass is 3 to 4 times more resistant to heat exposure than typical annealed glass. With the example of the times when they fail, or the temperatures they fail at, 234 degrees Fahrenheit for annealed glass versus 665, up to 665 Fahrenheit for tempered glass. Metal window screens also improve the performance of glass exposed to radiant heat. And Sometimes window covers or non-combustible shutters can be a good solution. This is a particularly good solution if your home is in real close proximity to a neighbor's home or outbuildings within 30 feet of a home. And I had somebody, we do consultations in our office and talk about how to improve resilience and home performance. And I spoke with someone who was really concerned about a neighbor on one side who was not maintaining their property as far as flammability of vegetative materials, things like that. And, you know, really one of the solutions is just maybe have window covers for that side. And we'll talk about siding too in that context. Another real vulnerable area, decks, patios, and porches. So if decks ignite, a home can be exposed to flames and or radiant heat and embers. Embers can also directly ignite deck boards. So because they're a flat horizontal surface, like we said, embers can easily land on them. So that makes that a real vulnerable surface. Combustible materials under and on top of decks increase vulnerability. And the most common deck boards are combustible, so redwood and cedar, etc. Decks that overhang slopes are vulnerable to flames from downslope vegetation. So decks that overhang slopes, when there's downslope vegetation, really important to keep that downslope vegetation under control. So how to reduce vulnerability of decks? Create an ember resistant zone under and around decks. Enclose the underside. If you can't, you know, just if you have to store things under the deck, consider enclosing the deck with non-combustible siding or fine mesh or something, fine screening that will help to mitigate ember intrusion. And if you're going to enclose the deck with siding, be sure to make sure that that area is properly ventilated so that you don't have moisture issues underneath the deck if it's enclosed. You can also, if you're not ready to go full out and replace the whole deck, you can consider replacing just the deck boards in close proximity of the house. So within a few feet next to the house, just the first couple of boards or even the first one board would help with a non-combustible material. So that could be like a metal drain area or even flashing against the house, something that just is a fire break. And there's some good pictures here of what we're talking about here. You can install metal flashing between the ledger board and the joists to protect combustible siding. This is especially important when the siding is combustible. And then move combustible furniture and cushions inside or away from the house. So during fire season, really good practice. Remove any debris that accumulates between deck board gaps. Another practice is to actually make the gap a little wider than has been traditionally installed, so that that debris doesn't have an opportunity to really build up between the deck boards. It can actually just fall through. Again, keeping that the 0 to 5 area free of vegetative debris. Cover an existing combustible deck with a non-combustible surface. So I'm just trying to see. Oh, that was one I missed. And I'm like, oh, wait, very important one. So cover the existing wooden deck, which I think this looks really nice, the tile over an existing combustible wooden deck, because the surface is really the most vulnerable area. And I think this looks beautiful, actually. So it's a nice improvement, and it really helps with the vulnerability to wildfire embers. And then the other that I missed by mistake was use a non-combustible or ignition resistant higher density decking product for new or replacement decks. So an example here is lightweight concrete, and then down below is actually a deck of a composite material that's listed in the Wildfire Urban Interface, the Fire Marshal's materials directory. And so there are many materials in the directory that are suitable for deck surfaces. Really, some are even higher density wood products. Not all composite wood actually meets the WUI requirements, but it's a pretty nice list of materials in that database. So that's a real good solution too. Siding is the next area to focus on. Siding is vulnerable to extended exposure to flames and radiant heat. Nearby structures dramatically increase vulnerability. Gaps in combustible siding are vulnerable to hot embers lodging into those gaps and burning. Partly decayed wood is much more vulnerable. And accumulated debris on horizontal surfaces adjacent to vertical siding increases risk from embers. So I think these are really good representative images. We've got this area with a dormer on the roof where there's vertical meets horizontal, where debris accumulated, and likely that probably or likely would have not burned through if it was a Class A roof. However, if this is combustible siding, that's problematic for sure. So these are the kind of more simple, low-cost things we can do to really mitigate this issue. This other image here is a test site where they're just testing the flammability of different types of siding. One is a combustible siding, a wood siding. The other is a cementitious siding. This is just older wood siding, definitely flammable, with single pane windows with wood frames. That same issue with the debris buildup. And then here's a picture of siding where it actually sits, the wood is right next to the ground. So there's no gap between the ground and the wood surface of the siding. And that really can be vulnerable to the vegetation on the ground starting to burn and then spreading to the siding. So how to reduce the vulnerability of siding. So what we're trying to do today is talk about how you could, either do it on a small scale, real simple, straightforward, no cost, all the way to potentially replacing your existing siding. So if you're going to replace your siding, say you have older wood siding, use non-combustible siding like 3-coat stucco or cement board, and there are others. Orientations close to other structures are a higher priority. So if you can only do one orientation because of budgetary issues, focus on those orientations that are most vulnerable. Replace dry rot in existing siding. So rotting wood is much more vulnerable to fire. Seal joints and cracks to avoid ember intrusion. Install metal flashing between the ledger board and joists to protect combustible siding. We talked about this in the deck section. Maintain a minimum of 6-inch vertical non-combustible zone from the ground. Sorry, there's a typo there. From the ground to where the siding begins. So there's some good pictures here. One little drawing. So you got a non-combustible gravel ground cover, and then a minimum of 6 inches of concrete from at the foundation. And this is a real common, image here of how our homes are constructed. But many times you'll see wood siding touching the ground. So here's another where it's a retrofit where they actually replaced the lower 6 inches with a non-combustible siding, but left the rest of the combustible siding in place. So that can be a nice low-cost kind of intermediary measure to implement. And then here where you've got that vulnerable area where the roof surface meets the vertical siding, consider installing metal flashing there so that we can really avoid that potential, and also clean the vegetative debris always, but kind of avoid that or mitigate that spreading of fire to the combustible siding. I think I covered that. Oh, is that it? Yeah. So I wanted to also address the co-benefits of home hardening. And this is actually building hardening. It could really all applies to commercial buildings, any buildings in the in wildfire prone areas. And Sonoma County's definitely seen its share. So some co-benefits include energy efficiency, comfort, and indoor air quality. So when we install high performance windows, that's definitely a measure that meets all of those criteria. And air sealing. So when we're replacing windows and doing even the air sealing on the siding, any air sealing that you do in your home actually improves the energy efficiency performance, makes you less vulnerable to wildfire intrusion, and improves comfort and greatly improves indoor air quality. So when we can seal our homes, we actually mitigate that transfer of air, that unwanted transfer of air between indoors and outside. So this is really, really important for times when we're in active wildfire season, and when we have wildfire smoke events. We can really keep our homes sealed, like close all our windows and close our doors, recirculate the air in our home with our heating and cooling systems, and actually really help to keep the indoor air quality acceptable, even when the outdoor air quality is not. So this has a really good benefit, and there are incentive programs that will help with air sealing an existing home. And you can contact our office. Our contact information is at the end to find out about those programs. And then when you remove siding, if you do decide to re-side, it's a great opportunity to upgrade at insulation. It exposes the wall cavity. You can either insulate the, pardon me. Okay, insulate the wall cavity, or you could actually add insulation, rigid insulation underneath the siding at that time. So it's a real good thing to consider. You might want to add, upgrade to a cool roof when you're re-roofing. That can help with cooling costs and cooling loads. Home insurance premiums can be really beneficial to home insurance premiums. Many home insurance or insurance agencies will actually give you a bonus or reduced rates for these types of measures, and especially in WUI areas. It can enhance resale value for sure, and there are more benefits. So I've made a list of useful resources. There's actually many more out there. We've had so much experience with wildfire in recent years. A lot of resources have been developed. So this is only some of them, but these are great resources. So I highly recommend you to look, recommend that you look into these, and we are going to be sharing the slides. So one of the programs we have in our office is the Sonoma County Energy Independence Program. And this past year, we were given permission by at the state level and also by the Board of Supervisors to expand our program to include, we've traditionally financed energy, water, and solar improvements and electric vehicle charging stations, but through our Property Assessed Clean Energy Financing Program, or SCIPE, Sonoma County Energy Independence Program. But now we can actually finance wildfire safety improvements and seismic upgrades. So this is a really a great financing tool. The financing is, the terms are 10 or 20 years. The interest rate is 5.99% at this time. It's a fixed rate. The fees are real low. We're a municipal property assessed clean energy financing program. So our fees are very low, and we're really all about consumer advocacy and education for property owners in Sonoma County. The financing is paid back through the county tax bill system, and it's not an income or credit qualifying program. Actually, the financing levels are based on property value and equity in the home. And our staff is just really ready and waiting to help you if you have questions about this program or anything else we're talking about today. So we finance, like I said, energy, water, solar improvements, electric vehicle charging stations, seismic strengthening, and wildfire safety improvements. And that's the direct website to the financing program. So to be eligible, property taxes and mortgage payments must be current. Existing liens on the property cannot exceed the market value. No property tax defaults are allowed within the last 3 years. Any bankruptcies must be discharged for at least 1 year. and the applicant must be the legal owner of the property, and all owners must sign the applications and all the documents associated with the financing. Eligible improvements include, this is just a short list because this is the related to wildfire safety and seismic strengthening, and we have many more improvements associated with that help with energy efficiency upgrades and water efficiency also. But roofing, gutters, downspouts, so Class A roofing, non-combustible gutters and downspouts and gutter covers, solar PV, battery storage is a really great resiliency measure to help with the public safety power shutoffs and power outages during wildfire safety events and other events. Attic, eave, and foundation vents, soffit enclosures, siding replacements, window replacements, hardscaping. There's an option for custom wildfire safety improvements that we look at on a case-by-case basis, and seismic strengthening, including direct and indirect costs like engineering and things like that. So where to start? Visit this URL, sonomacountyenergy.org/financing. Contact our office. Like I said, we have extremely knowledgeable, helpful staff. So that any questions you have, we're very happy to answer them and very available. Or email Skype@sonomacountyenergy.org. And now questions, please. Any questions, Dory?
Yes, let me feed them to you.
Okay.
First one, I've read 2 problems about gutter covers. Silt and dirt accumulates in the gutter, and also leaves, etc., can accumulate on top of the covers. Comments or advice?
Well, I think everything's going to have some issues and there are trade-offs. I think, again, I mentioned when I talked about gutter covers, they are actually definitely recommended, but you still have to clean the debris, and likely you'd have to maybe, if dirt builds up in there, you likely have to clean it out every so often. But in my research and the things I've read, that is a best practice to have non-combustible gutter covers. And also gutters require maintenance. So maybe on an annual basis, maybe shoot a little water through there carefully so you're not wasting water, because we're very concerned about that. But that's my advice. And if, there's, again, lots of those resources that we listed on our resource slide have lots of information and deal with FAQs like that.
The next question is, there's some concern about soffited eave vents, worries that embers could still get inside. Comments or advice?
You still need venting in an attic condition. So the soffited vents are a better solution than the open condition, but not much you can do about needing venting unless you're going to seal your attic. You know what I mean? So, and that has its own issues. So you have to work with a professional to see what the best solution for you is. Everything's a trade-off, really. There's, because unless we can live in a metal box that has no openings, we're going to have to deal with these issues the best way we can.
Right. Next question. Turf removal rebates encourage 2 to 4 inches of organic mulch be applied to areas where turf used to be. This is often within 5 feet of the home. This seems to be counter of what was just shared, or what was shared when you spoke about that section. It's not really a question, it's more of a comment.
Yeah, it's non-combustible mulch within the first 5 feet. That is the best practice for wildfire safety. And you can use non-combustible mulch and still meet that criteria. Speak with, if you're doing a cash for grass program, talk to the program representative about solutions. But I wouldn't install wood mulch next to my home within the first 5 feet. And this isn't an opinion. This is after a lot of research. So it's something to really, again, look at those resources and talk to the rebate program manager about solutions.
All right, next question. Is the use of EIFS, exterior installation finishing system, that traditionally uses foam plastic board as a base for a thin coat of stucco, a recommended wall covering in wildfire zones?
So, so I can't really recommend anything, but what we're allowing for in our program, and what I've in my research and in the recommendations allow for, is non-combustible siding. So if that EIFS system has non-combustible siding, then yeah, it's the surface of the siding that we're talking about, because we never want the flames to penetrate the siding, right, and get to that plastic material, actually that foam material, that may, be rated as fire resistant, or may have a rating that is good, but once it catches, it's not a good thing. So really, the surface is what we're talking about, non-combustible surface. Again, a professional contractor who's working on re-siding your home can answer those types of questions in greater detail.
Great. Let's see. If rock materials are cost prohibitive and or for mulching further out from the house, what type of mulch is best if larger fir bark type is larger fir bark type acceptable?
So definitely the larger material is more, is better, right? So, it's just it's a logic thing. Whatever would be less prone to catching fire. The best practice is not to use wood up against the home. That's the best practice. However, the larger the material, the better if you're going to use wood mulch. And organic mulch has its place for sure. However, next to the home is not really the best place for combustible mulches.
Right. Is an ironwood wood deck fire resistant enough?
I don't know that, but if you look at that material database from the fire marshal, they actually list all sorts of wood products, and anything that's WUI rated. You can look at the material brochure, contact the manufacturer for the material that you're considering, and you can see if it actually meets that criteria. It'll actually be wildland urban interface rated, or acceptable.
All right. Do you recommend tree removal in the 100-foot zone for specific types of trees that may be more flammable?
So I'm not a vegetative management specialist. Unfortunately, I am interested in that, but I'm not going to really be able to speak to something. And I don't recommend just arbitrary tree removal in any case. But I would actually refer you to those really great resources on that slide for more information about vegetative management in those zones further away from the home. My area of expertise is actually building science, so I am focused mostly on home hardening in my research.
All right. What is non-combustible mulch?
It's really like rock, gravel, paving, things like that. Even bare earth is non-combustible, but that's not the best solution for, um, you know, for water drainage, things like that. But gravel's a great solution, like pea gravel, things like that.
Okay. This is related to the earlier question about soffitted vents. My question about the soffitted vents was different. Better than sidewall vents, but are they still vulnerable? We are having our vents covered with Vulcan, but do we still need to do the soffit vents as well?
If you're working with a professional contractor, I would actually ask them about the best solutions for that. If you've got the 1/4-inch screen on the soffit vents, that would be a pretty easy solution, just to change those to, either 16th or 1/8-inch screening. Again, in coordination with a professional, so that you understand what the impact on airflow in your attic space is. That's really important for moisture control. So we don't want to, do one thing to, ruin another aspect. So if you're doing the Vulcan vents on, you said the gable end, I think, definitely, if you're working with a professional, ask them that question.
Okay, and I think the comment back was that the professional installer is motivated to have them do them all.
With the Vulcan vents on the soffits? Is that what they're saying?
Yes.
Um, you know, uh, the most vulnerable is the gable end. That's from the research that I've done. The soffits, if they're enclosed and it's just the soffit vents, little less vulnerable, right? So you're going to have to prioritize depending on your goals and your budget, and lots of information on vents in those resources.
Great. So we've had a lot of questions or comments about getting those links out. The slides and the recording will be sent out to everyone. We will try and get it out pretty quick so everyone will have access to all of those links. I know it went by pretty quick and there are some great resources on there. Thank you, Chris. And yeah, we'll get those out hopefully pretty shortly to you. And that looks like the last question. And we're just about at time. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Some great information. Thanks, Chris. Chris is one of our, does our Better Building. She leads our Better Building consultations. I encourage you, if you have any further questions, you have some projects you want to talk about or with their energy, fire hardening, that type of thing around better buildings, please give us a call and get something scheduled.
Okay,
right,
thanks.
everyone.
Thanks.
Have a great day. And thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Dory.